Hello everybody and welcome back to week 5 of the Investment Club videos. This week's going to be a lot of information, just a heads up. I'm going to try and keep it as short and simple as I can. So here we go. So to start off week 5, we're going to do a quick recap of what we've gone over and learned so far. So the first thing we've done and learned is we know our client Florian is an investor who wants to build a long-term investment fund to help support him and his family that is both geographically diverse and environmentally conscious to at least some degree, which pretty much means he wants an investment fund that's going to last and going to make money over time, that is not just based in the US or based in one country, and has at least some environmental concern tacked into the companies. So some of the companies we invest in should care about the environment a little bit. So with that, we are going to be looking for a safe to mildly aggressive portfolio with some room for risks, but still needs the stability for long-term family goals that he has in mind. We will have to know the risks of each stock we're investing in and know how to apply the SWOT analysis and look at other factors like PE and explain them thoroughly to show why we are investing, how we are investing. And this is really going to lead us into the next part of this and to the next part of the competition. Another thing that we have to worry about in this competition is following the approved stock list and not use outside sources, which means we'll have access to a lot of blue chip or staple stocks for stability, but it's also going to be a little more difficult to find some more diverse stocks and things to fit his needs when we are cut down to as many stocks as we are. So make sure you're researching each individual stock in your sector and not just picking a couple, because you're going to need to look at each stock to try and find the best ones to fit this portfolio. And if we can successfully innovate these things into these investment choices and explain why you chose them, it will make this next step of the competition and writing these papers a whole lot easier for you and your teammates. So, this is a requirement of this competition. So, if your team wants to continue competing, we will have to have this paper submitted. So, make sure you're contacting your team leader and you're figuring out when you have to have this done and what they need of you. That was also a link to it, but I'll have that also in the description of this. So this paper is kind of how they're going to look at us. So for this paper, we're going to have to include our investment strategy, our team decision-making process, and our top stock holdings. What those three things mean is we're going to have to explain what our goals are for this portfolio and the things we're trying to accomplish in it. So what are things we're doing, like what types of stocks are we looking at? Why are we looking at specific stocks over others in this portfolio? And how are we different from everybody else? That's kind of trying to put your strategy and how it sets you apart from the rest of the teams. Now, the second portion, the team decision-making process, this covers how you and your teammates work individually and as a group to make decisions and buy stocks. So that's kind of more focusing on what are you thinking about when you're suggesting a stock, and what does your team discuss before you actually purchase that stock? What are things you guys are considering as a whole when you're trying to piece together which stocks you want? For top stock holdings, it's pretty self-explanatory and simple. They really just are looking for, have you actually executed any of these things yet? And if you have, it'll be very easy to just put what you've done and what you've purchased. Now, here are some requirements for this paper. And mostly this is on us team leaders to make sure is correct, but it's going to have a title page with your team's name, your advisor's name and email, Mounds View High School, a finalized team member list, and it should be 1 to 2 pages, double space, Times New Roman, and just make sure your team leader submits it. And don't be afraid to get on their back a little bit to make sure it's submitted. Now, here are some things that people have said are very useful and will help you write a good paper for this competition. The strategy you should look at when starting this paper are what are the objectives of this potential client and how are you taking them into account? So what are you doing to fulfill your client's asks? Not just a good portfolio, but what are you doing to tailor this portfolio to this client? Another big thing to remember, buy low and sell high is not a strategy. That's just how you make money in a stock. A strategy is a plan of attack and a reasoning behind why you're doing things, and just more thought out than a simple phrase. You have to understand why certain stocks wouldn't fit and why certain stocks do fit. And another thing you have to remember is we only have this competition for 10 weeks. Well, we're trying to build a long-term portfolio, so it's going to be a lot of speculating and a lot of, well, in the future we would do this and be doing and thinking about these things because this is a case study. So this isn't an actual thing. This is a chunk that we have to prove ourselves that we would be able to do this in the long term. So just keep bringing up the long term and keep bringing up what you would do in the future as well as what you're doing right now to make this a well-rounded, solid paper. And another thing that I've found that people give this tip a lot is that technical speech and jargon is not going to help your paper any, because they want simple to the point facts that prove why your ideas and strategies are better. They don't want a paper you're just running around trying to confuse them with big words. And just again, remember, you're writing this paper for the judges. You're not writing it for some stock analysis person. That's not who's going to be reading it. So you want it to have a story, and you want to make it sound like the portfolio you're building reflects on your target. So you want to show how the portfolio you guys have built successfully reflects what Florian is as a person, and like how the companies that you've picked and the things you've picked are tailored to him. So just make sure you're connecting this portfolio as tightly to Florian as you can. Another thing that will help but can hurt you is you're going to want some graphics in there. It'll make it easier to read and understand, but don't go overboard. Don't make it too complicated. Simple graphs and charts are very useful in moderation. If you make it too confusing or you throw too many charts and graphs in, you're going to take away from your own paper. Another thing, don't start defining terms. That's not really what they want to read. They want to read the story of how we built a successful portfolio for Florian and how this portfolio will be better than anyone else's portfolio for Florian. Finally, I did a little bit of research on what these judges have said about top contenders in the past. and things they've done well, and things that judges really said were useful and that they saw in a very consistent manner, and most teams did, was they'd find a unique strategy. So it wouldn't be the same cut and dry investment strategy that you would initially think of. They'd think outside of the box a little bit and try and come at it from a new angle. Another thing they noticed in all of the teams, especially at those more final stages, each team member was bringing lots of energy and ideas into it. So there was constantly different ideas being thrown out by different team members, and they were able to explain why. So it's not just having a unique idea, and it's not just bringing the energy, it's also being able to explain your reasonings and put it into a paper and make others explain why you have the best strategy. And I know this is a lot, and I know this paper sounds kind of confusing and crazy, but if each of your team members just puts a little bit into it, it's not the end of the world. Your team leader will guide you. Make sure to be asking questions. They've hopefully done this before. And good luck to all of you guys on your papers.